Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Ascension, The Devil's Dealer reaches a turning point in the life of this powerful E-Steam series story. Get E-Steam Ascension at online booksellers today. In a previous video, I called many individuals that are currently working in the comic book industry grossly unqualified. And the reason why I call them grossly unqualified is not because I'm a comic book fan, it is because I'm a publisher with over 9 years of experience and a writer with over 30 years of experience. And as I take an objective look at what they have presented in publications like Marvel Comics and DC Comics, that is the criteria that I judge them as being grossly unqualified to publish, write, or edit comic books. Because when I look at the products that are being produced, that is what I judge them by. And when I look at a comic book like the recent Hulk comic book that Marvel has produced, I can honestly say that that person is grossly unqualified to work at a place like Marvel Comics. Now, when you take a look at this recent so-called Hulk comic book, you have this comic book which is supposed to be about Jennifer Walters dealing with PTSD. However, when we open up the comic book and take a look at the pages inside of it, we get a story that goes nowhere. I mean, we get no story talking about this woman's post-traumatic stress disorder, her anxieties, or the issues related to it. Instead, we get an entire issue, one of them, talking about a Jennifer Walters working on a case for an eviction of an old lady. We get another one talking about a storyline featuring a YouTube cooking show, and these stories meander for over 9 issues. Now, when it comes down to a comic, usually a story arc finishes in 2 to 3 issues. However, this writer's 9 issues in and nothing is going anywhere. Usually in 9 issues, you would have finished at least 3 2-issue arcs or 4 2-issue arcs, or worked on a 2-issue arc, a 3-issue arc, and another 2-issue arc. You would have put together several series of story arcs which would have been building towards an overreaching arc. But this writer is so bad that they cannot come together to put together a series of cohesive stories that compel the reader to buy this book. Now, another grossly unqualified writer, as I saw it, was Gabby Rivera with the whole America Chavez comic book. And this was another comic that was just terrible from minute one. Terrible stories, terrible artwork, just a whole terrible mess. And the writing in this one was also very poor. And again, grossly unqualified individual because, yes, she had one YA novel that she wrote. And when I look at YA novels, it's not that hard to write those compared to regular novels. But again, this person just did not know how to work in the paradigm of comic books and superheroes, and it showed on the page of her work. It just was not flowing, it was not coming together. It was a whole bunch of big ideas, but no execution on concept. Now, another writer I had a problem with was your Ta-Nehisi Coates. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates has a much more storied background. He's a National Book Award winner for his nonfiction, Between the World and Me. However, his nonfiction experience doesn't really translate well into writing fantasy and science fiction like that in Marvel Comics. And he was handed not only the Black Panther character, but he was also allowed to come in and write other Black Panther titles like Black Panther and the Crew. Unfortunately, he had no real experience writing fiction, and he had no real understanding that not only writing fiction is different, but writing comic books is also different as well, because each medium has its own story model. So he came in trying to push a political agenda in his stories, but he didn't understand how the model worked, and it showed in his execution of concept, because his Black Panther had the Black Panther passive in the background, but in comics, superheroes need to be active. People want to see the hero in action. They want to see him taking on the bad guys. We didn't get that with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Instead, we got a whole bunch of exposition, a whole bunch of external characters and supporting characters talking, and that doesn't sell comic books. That's why I say he's grossly unqualified to write comic books, because he doesn't understand the whole format, he doesn't understand the medium, and he doesn't understand that the character has to be front and center. He instead wants to push ideas and politics, but that doesn't sell comic books. Comic books are a business, and grossly unqualified writers don't understand that comic books are a business, and your goal is to sell characters to readers, and that's the primary goal of a comic book writer. Is that's how you get more jobs, by showing that you can sell this character to readers. You really want to sell those characters to as many people as possible, and you want to create the best quality book. But unfortunately, when it comes down to, many of the grossly unqualified comic book people out there, they're not there to sell comic books. They don't love comic books. They don't care about comic books. Moreover, they don't care about comic books as a business. They don't understand that in order to keep your job, you have to have strong sales. Now, as a guy with a publishing background, I understand that the more recent titles that I produce sell the catalog in the backlist, and they also sell future books. So I understand that I have to continue producing quality work if I not only want to sell older titles, but I also have to sell the newer titles by the book in the person's hand. And that's how books are sold. Unfortunately, many of these grossly unqualified writers, they're just there thinking that working at a place like Marvel or DC is a paycheck, and it's something that they can do to tide them over. For me, it's not something to tide me over. It's about creating quality stories that entertain the reader and then give that reader incentive to go buy backlist titles or buy future titles. That I sell, that this is a business, and that you are in the business of providing the reader with quality entertainment for their dollar. And when it comes down to these grossly unqualified writers, they're not thinking about the customer in the equation as it relates to comic books. They're thinking about themselves, and they're seeing this job as just a way to collect a paycheck. In fact, this is the same type of attitude that many people used to have about teaching in the 1970s and the 1980s. Because they didn't know how to do anything else, they came into teaching, and as a result, we wound up with kids who wound up dropping out of school, hating school, and having nothing to do with school. And what do we have in the comic book industry right now? We have many people who don't want to be a part of comics, and they're alienating people and making them not want to buy comics. And that's the big problem when you have the wrong people working somewhere, is that they don't really care about the products they're producing, they don't care about the quality of the products they're producing, and they don't care about the customers that they're serving. Now, a person like myself, I truly do care about my customers, and I care to the point where I want to give them the highest quality products possible. When I go out here and I publish an SJS Direct publication, I want that book to meet a certain standard for quality. I make every effort to make sure that the spelling and the punctuation and the grammar are the best they can be. I want to make sure that the book has a quality cover on it, and I want to make sure that the story is compelling to the point where the reader wants to go out and buy more books. Now, when I look at these other grossly unqualified people out here, again, I'm judging them by what's on the page of their comics. And when I look at the pages of their comics, I'm seeing expository sequences, passive characters, and books that take literally 9-10 issues to complete a story arc. And that's unacceptable for me. As I see it, if I can go out of my way to go out and produce a book like a Isis Samurai Goddess, which finishes in one book, then what's to stop these people who are working for $1 billion company? It's a sad day when a guy working on his own books with print on demand is making better efforts than the people working at a Marvel Comics or a DC Comics, who are working at a multi-billion-dollar corporation, yet they're not thinking about producing anything on any sort of level of standard. Yet this person is considered qualified to work at this company, but a guy like me is not considered qualified, even though he is making every effort to raise the bar in terms of quality, because that shows us that companies like Marvel take people for granted. I mean, if you've got this grossly unqualified person working here and they're making a mess and you keep giving them a pass, meanwhile the person was working on their own is raising the bar in the company that they're trying to build, that shows us that they're not really concerned with quality. And that's why I say they're grossly unqualified, because I look at what they're producing on the page of their comics, and what's on the page of their comics is not worth your $3.99. Now, I value your money, and that's why I want to go out here and raise that bar and make sure that something is up to standard, because I want you to have the very best. As a writer, I want my readers to have the very best, and that's the standard I set, and that's the standard I believe should be at these multi-billion-dollar companies like DC Comics and Marvel Comics. There should be a high standard. You should be getting more for your money. I mean, I work hard to give you a quality book at $3.99 in digital or $14.99. You should get the exact same thing. You should not have to sit there and deal with bad comics that come out every month and pay and believe that this is what's supposed to be the gold standard. I mean, Marvel Comics and DC Comics, these are supposed to be the gold standard companies, yet they think that producing substandard is okay, and that having people in your company that have an attitude of, I can sell 15,000 copies is good enough. No, that's not good enough for me at SJS Direct, and it should not be the standard at these companies. It should be, you should be trying to strive to sell the most copies to the most readers, because that's the standard I have for myself. I would love to have 15,000 and even break that boundary to go further to 20, 25, 30, even 100,000 sales, because to me, if the stories are good, they're going to find an audience, and if the quality is good, it's going to lead to you building that word of mouth. The people who are grossly unqualified, as I see it right now, they have this attitude of, I just do the minimum and I don't care, and that should not be the standard at a Marvel Comics. It should not be the standard at any comic book company, where you're just going to do the minimum, because if you put in a minimum effort, you're going to get a minimum result, but if you put in maximum effort, you should see maximum results. And I'm the kind of guy, I put in maximum effort. I mean, I work holidays, I work weekends, and the reason why I do that is because I want to give people the best possible quality product that I can give them, and I don't see that at your Marvel Comics right now, or your DC Comics right now. I don't see people with that type of passion or that type of heart. I don't see people who care that much about the product, because when I look at what they're putting on the page, it's just not good enough for me. And as I see it, most comic fans deserve better, and they deserve better quality, and they deserve somebody who's going to go out here and give them the very best in terms of entertainment value per dollar, because as I see it, this is your money, and you deserve someone who's going to go out here and give you that type of quality. If you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com, and you can try the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the Spinsterella trilogy, and the Temptation of John Haynes, and see the difference between a Marvel comic and an SJS Direct publication. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.